r/AskReddit by Reddit tells. Students of Reddit who had a sexual relationship with a teacher. How did it start? And how did it turn out? I guess I technically had a sexual relationship with a teacher. She was a lab TA for my invertebrate zoology lab and refused to do anything with me until after the class. After classes, we partied and hooked up quite a lot. After a year of us still being together, other TAs started dating undergrads. 6 years later, we are married and have a kid together. Edit, because someone had to point out that I missed an apostrophe. Downloaded Tinder and he was my first match. Technically, he was studying to become a teacher and working at the school while doing that, but was seen as a member of the staff. I was 5 months away from completing high school at this point, and already 18. He was 23, and while we had an emotional relationship, he refused to do anything sexual or physical until after I'd graduated. When I was 19, I dated a professor at my university for a few months. I wasn't his student, but he taught some of my friends. We met randomly at a club, and I had no idea he was a professor at my uni until a few days later, when we started texting. He was really hot, he had dark hair and bright blue eyes, and told me that his female students would flirt with him in office hours. He was 33, so very young for a prof, but pretty old for me at the time. It was fun for a bit. He was not happy when we realized he taught some of my friends. The day we realized he taught my friends was when I was at his apartment a couple weeks after meeting, and I asked to see some of his class materials. He thought it would be interesting if I could tell the difference between a BS essay and a great essay, even if I wasn't familiar with the subject. So I started reading and realized the BS essay with a failing grade had my friend's name at the top. He was very upset because apparently it's some sort of privacy violation that I was looking at her failed assignment. But I thought it was sexy that he thought my friend's essay sucked, really played up his position of power in my mind. It started innocently enough. She was my chorus teacher, fresh out of college and only 6 years older than me. My brother WAA actually dating her friend from high school. I used to cut class and say I had a music lesson and we'd just hang in the music room, talk about books, music, movies. Then she started complaining about her relationship a lot, needing hugs, which I was more than happy to help with. It eventually turned to making out, and we finally started hooking up when she gave me rides home after school. I honestly felt like Elle found $1 million, but couldn't tell anybody about it. It was weird. Then she got weird, asking for her hugs in front of the entire class. I knew everyone knew. I started riding home with my friends again. Then she started just showing up at my house. Had a very awkward convo with my dad who knew exactly what was going on, but was so impressed he just kept saying damn she's pretty. Ghosting hadn't been invented back then, but Elle did the best Elle could. Eventually she chilled out. A few months later Elle stopped by her room during our normal hang set time and she apologized. Told me she was just going through a lot with her shitty boyfriend and needed some attention from someone that actually liked her. We didn't talk much after that. Elle graduated soon after, but we are friends on Facebook, and she actually married a decent guy and has a nice family. I'm very relieved we were never found out. It would have been devastating to both of us. I fell in love with the workshop supervisor at my university that guides the workshop that I need for my education. She is about a year older than I am. I'm doing some small arts and crafts and letterworking. She was interested in getting something, and she bought something custom. I can't remember how it started out, but for some reason or another, we had some drinks which ended in a night spent together and a sexual relationship. We discovered an attraction to each other. She went to the faculty director with the situation and explained it. Since she cannot give marks on my work and is only a guide in the eyes of the university, they approved of the relationship. That was about 3 years ago. We are still together as I'm finishing my education. The relationship moved on from the sexual flirt which it all started with to something deep. We live together for 2 years now, and she helps me something with running the 2 companies that I set up beside my study. When I finish my education next year I will even propose to her. Small edit. I just want to clarify that at the start of this relation we well pasted the 18 years old mark. So I actually didn't know she was my teacher. She was maybe 23 to 24, and I just turned 17. I was in California during summer vacation. Went to Disneyland, California Adventure, all the fun stuff. Met her while in line for Winnie the Pooh ride. None of my friends wanted to go with me. We had fun, hit it off, and eventually go to her hotel room. Spent the weekend meeting up and hanging out, and then we parted ways. First day of the new semester comes around, and I see her in the classroom, and I'm excited. I didn't know she went to this school, and so I went in and sat down, and she goes up to the front of the room and introduced herself to everyone. Then we do the whole get to know each other thing, and what we did over summer. Got to me, her face turned purple, like she couldn't breathe. Had a crush on one of my grad school teachers for a year and a half. I was into everything about her. Looks, brain, everything. I ended up teaching the same subject many years later, and I still use the notes and materials from her classes with my own students. She was engaged to someone else, so I never even thought about anything ever happening. It was a nice fantasy. Then out of the blue, she calls my cell phone and tells me that she's thinking of getting into yoga and knows that I'm into yoga, so would I get a drink with her and tell her more. I was not exactly experienced with hookups, and I actually took her at her word. I went expecting to talk about yoga and go home afterwards. We ended up getting totally wasted, making out in the middle of a bar, and then I walked her home, where I kept saying I'm sorry and this definitely isn't happening, and I'll just get you to your door and go home. It did happen, but the joke was on her. She got a few seconds of the worst sex of her life, and then got to listen to me in the bathroom for a while. The next day she found me in the hallway and told me that it was a huge mistake and asked me not to tell anyone. Nobody would believe me anyway, so I agreed. I can honestly say I wish the entire thing had never happened. She got married and moved on with her life. I ended up having to take her husband's class before I could graduate. My 8th grade teacher. This was during the 80s, before all the scandals, when no one really cared if a female teacher was spending a lot of time alone with one of her students. I was 14. She was mid-40s and a family friend who had known me since I was a little kid. She asked me to volunteer for a school activity that had us spending time together after class and occasionally off campus. My mom knew her, so wasn't bothered I was spending so much time with her. She had always teased and playfully touched me as a kid. When we were alone after class, she started touching me more and flirting and talking about intimate things like her divorce and asking me if I had a girlfriend yet. She escalated the intimacy through the year, pushing boundaries a little more each time. We started having sex that summer. It went on for about 3 months. She ended it once I went to high school. My family moved out of state after my freshman year. I had a long talk with her before leaving, and we parted on good terms. I never spoke to her again, but heard she eventually remarried and became vice principal at another school. She died a few years ago. I'm almost 50 and still think about her quite often. My freshman psychology teacher. I caught a crush on him and he noticed. We started chatting via email, then phone calls, and before long he invited me to his house in the evenings to watch movies. We started having sex before the semester was out. Then the shit started happening. Him avoiding me at unpredictable times, dumping me, then asking me to come back, acting sneaky, getting caught lying about his spending innocent time with other female students, refusing to speak to me for weeks on end, saying he was busy while hanging out with others instead, but then spending weeks at a time exclusively with me. Oh, and all this after he freaking married me in secret. I spent 4 years trauma bonded to him, while he in turns rejected me, seemed genuinely emotionally invested, and either pretended to like me or openly hated me. I tried to walk away, and he would pull me back. It was emotional torture, but I was too weak and damaged to leave for good. I became deeply depressed, my self-esteem shattered, and I contemplated suicide to the point I gave many of my cherished belongings away in preparation and withdrew socially. I was a mess. And still he continued to jerk me around emotionally. It's been a year now since we broke up, but we still talk, dragging out the rejection. I can barely sleep. I cry every morning. As soon as I wake, I fall asleep crying most nights. I'm completely miserable, and there are days I wish we'd never met. I'm going to start counseling soon. because I can't go on like this anymore. My best friend at school was pretty much the definition of jailbait. She had reasons, but her behavior was totally messed up. She was obsessed with one of our teachers, who was friends with her parents. She used to intentionally walk around in underwear and a long t-shirt, and reach up to open cupboards in the kitchen when he visited. His classroom was on the ground floor, and had windows at the back, so one day she snuck over, and flashed him her boobs. She was convinced he fancied her, but looking back, her behavior was absolutely awful, and it must have been so awkward for him to have a 15-year-old throwing herself at him. Nothing ever came of it, but her boyfriend shortly after that was 18 and frequently messaged me how freaked out he was that they'd get caught. I totally think him having a relationship with her was wrong, but I can sympathize with his position a bit, because she was crazy manipulative and relentless when she wanted a guy. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more great content. Like the video if you enjoyed. Comment with your own stories.